people who couldn't make it are probably going to hit the live stream.
Okay. Yeah, the snowstorm shut a bunch of people down, I guess. I saw terrifying pictures of Penn Station.
Oh my God, yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Nuts.
Yeah, and what, there was a multi-car accident that like stopped the Gowanus Bridge right at rush hour.
I drove down from Vermont. It was pretty bad last night.
Really? Yeah. But yeah, it was like a winter wonderland last night. Okay, so we'll start, since this, I think it's the smallest info session we've ever had, so it can be very informal. Feel free to jump in at any time. My name is Seth Manukin. I'm the director of the program. This is Tom Levinson, who was my predecessor as director and has been teaching in the program since when?
2005.
2005. What I'm going to do is give you a brief overview of the program, of what we do here, of the type of things that we're hoping our students accomplish, a rundown of the curriculum, and then we can take it from there, if that sounds good. Okay, so to start off, the thing that has been our biggest focus over the last several years is finding a way to get full funding for our students. Our goal is to have the program be entirely cost-free, meaning that you not only don't pay for tuition, but we cover expenses like housing and everything else. We're not at that point yet, but we are getting closer and closer, and we made a significant jump from last year to this year, and we're hoping to continue making those jumps. I think this year we averaged over $50,000 in aid per student. So I'm sure there will be other financial questions that come up, but that is, that's something that's a very serious focus of ours. And in fact, over the last couple of years, we've been able to, in a number of cases, increase financial aid once you get here, which is also great when we can do that. I'll just briefly, how we do financial aid. We do not decide we want this student and so we're going to give her more money. We have a pool of money for financial aid. We divide it among everyone. And then we also are extremely aggressive about going after internal scholarships for our students. So there are a number of different MIT scholarships that are open to graduate programs broadly that will fund students. And when we get one of those, then we can take that student's money and reallocate it to everyone else. The
other thing is that should you get a scholarship or funding from an outside source, for example, the Council for the Advancement of Science Writing gives grants to admitted students and so on. We do not reduce the award that we've offered. The only situation which would reduce it is if you're already fully funded. We won't pay you to come here. But until you get to the point, until you have reached, $85,000 in funding, we'll continue to try and get money for you. Just to start off, because I know that's a big concern for everyone. This is a very intimate program. We typically have 8 students a year. We've had 9 a couple of years and 7 a couple of years, but 8 is what we're going for. One of the reasons for that is because it's a program where there's a big focus on mentorship, both from a faculty-student perspective and also from an alumni student perspective, and from different groups within MIT. And we can talk about that a little bit as we go on. The way the year, so it's a year-long, meaning 12 months, not 2 semesters, 2 semesters and an internship program. And for the academic year, you would be taking 3 out of your 4 classes together.
You spend a lot of time with those other 7 students. That is also by design. We want our students to start to form a community of writers that they can use as support and rely on and as they go through their careers. The way those 3 courses per semester are divided up, in the fall semester, we have a mega seminar that counts as 2 courses. It meets for 6 hours a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 10 to noon. And that's called the Advanced Science Writing Seminar. And that is pretty much the foundation of what you'll be doing. In that, I have the syllabus here because I always forget something. In that, you cover, there are several different modules, starting out with news writing. That's the largest module in the fall. Then we have a data journalism module, a science policy module, a front of the book or short feature section, an archival section, an investigative reporter section, a podcasting section, and that's essentially it for the fall semester. Actually, the 2 of us don't teach any of those. We have a number of different people who are on faculty and instructors. Tim Deschamps, who right now is actually here on a Knight Science Journalism Fellowship, but has been running the Nova Next site for Nova, teaches the news segment. Rahul Bhargava, who's a research scientist at MIT, does the data journalism section. Bina Venkataraman, who was a senior policy advisor for climate policy in the Obama White House, does our policy section. She's also been a New York Times and a Boston Globe journalist. This year...
Is she now at STS?
No, she's at the Broad. She runs policy for the Broad, but
right.
She also teaches a course in
STS.
Science, Technology, and Society here. Marcia Bartusiak, sadly, this is her last year here, but she's been teaching the archival section in the front of the book section. So we'll be hiring someone new for that. Pulitzer Prize winning reporter Deborah Blum, who is the director of the Knight Science Journalism program, teaches our investigative section. And Cynthia Graber, who is the co-founder and co-host of Gastropod, a podcast about the science of food, which you should check out if you haven't, and a longtime NPR journalist, does our podcasting segment. That is the fall seminar. The 3rd course that you take during the fall that Tom and I actually teach together is the Thesis Seminar. The Thesis Seminar is something that we've changed over the last couple of years. It used to be, and everywhere else at MIT, it is a fake seminar in that it doesn't actually meet for 3 hours a week. It's just a way to get credit for taking for doing your thesis. We've turned it into a real course that meets for 3 hours a week. The fall semester especially is really a feature writing course. So in addition to developing your thesis, which we will talk about, you work on a 3,000 word feature story. That section is called Narrative Nonfiction, which Tom teaches. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's, as sort of mathematics is to the quantitative sciences, science news, the journalism section, the news section, is to sort of all the rest of science writing. And one of the key places you start developing how that kind of training feeds into doing longer form work, more lucrative work should you become a freelancer, and often the kind of writing that many of our students come hoping to master, is in the feature. So we spend a sort of spread out over the entire semester, we try and sort of recapitulate the process of developing, pitching, conceiving of, and then executing a real in-depth, narratively, structurally complex and hopefully interesting piece of writing. And in some ways, the critical difference between feature journalism and news journalism is that the news story's primary goal is to convey what happened, what's a paper, the discovery, the crime, whatever it may be. And in a feature story, you're really concerned with using what has happened in the area you're interested in conveying some meaning that is not only an interpretation of the event, but something that speaks to a larger concern. So we do that over the course of the semester. We go through all the stages. There are interim and in some ways slightly artificial requirements that you write a lead very early on and so forth. But this is all to really sort of give you the tools with which to then continue educating yourself as you move through this program and then out in the world, in ways that sort of equip you to be conscious of your craft and hone it as you go forward.
One of the things that we want to do here is give our students the tools so that they can be given any type of assignment by either a freelance outlet or a prospective employer, ranging from putting together an audio piece to doing a news piece that's due in 45 minutes, to doing a documentary piece, which we'll talk about in a second, that they can be given any type of assignment, and they might not be an expert at it, but they'll have a facility in it. The reason we do that is because in today's economic climate and journalistic climate, we don't want our students to ever be in a position where they are turning down work because they have never done that type of work before. And we've also found in our own careers and in our students that the more different skills you bring to the table, the more attractive you're going to be. Okay. So we always have a student who says, I'm really not interested in podcasting. Can I do something else for those 6 classes? And we always say no, because there's a sort of reason for all of this. So that's the fall semester. In the spring semester, the Advanced Science Writing Seminar, the mega course, becomes a normal course that meets for 3 hours a week. And in the spring, we have explanatory journalism. We continue the news segment, book reviews, essays, op-eds, and we conclude the investigative journalism segment. We also have the Thesis Seminar, which in the spring is actually focused on your thesis, which we'll talk about next. And then the third course, the third required course in the spring is a documentary film course, which Tom also teaches. So take it away.
My background is both writing and in documentary filmmaking. I was a producer for Nova for a lot of years and then a freelancer, producing mostly for Nova still, being slow-witted, or at least slow-moving. And the documentary course is actually, it's the only course in the science writing program curriculum that's open to undergraduates, or actually open to the entire university. And we do get people from Knight Fellows and some other graduate students and undergraduates in it. And essentially those who come in from outside the program have to show some prior skill to get into this, because this is a fast-paced and fairly advanced course. And those who come into the course from the program, most of you don't have significant background in filmmaking, but it's presumed that after both by self-selecting into this program and then the semester of work you've done, that you've got real storytelling skills. And we put that mix together and divide people up into teams, ideally of 3 people, sometimes as few as 2, sometimes as many as 4, to make to do what the primary work of the course is, which is starting from zero, make a 6 to 8 minute, 9 minute documentary short feature that will meet professional standards. And we do this in a number of ways. There are a number of exercises that go into that. There's a certain amount of scaffolding put around you so you don't have to do the entire project from scratch. One of the most important things we do is we actually hire a professional camera person who's our first choice is a guy who's shot for everyone and has won all the awards and so forth, BBC, PBS, many others. And the goal there is both to give you footage that you will be able to use effectively, but more to the point to actually see what goes into making high quality images more than just turning on a camera at full auto. But the real goal there are two real goals of the course beyond the one that Seth already mentioned, which is just to make sure that you have enough knowledge of how to do this, so that if your prospective employers say, I need something I need somebody to handle a camera, you guys can do that. The first is to introduce you to storytelling in a visual medium, because it's both different from the way you do it in print, and it incredibly effectively informs the way your own writing will then go forward. There are some things that you just do when you have pictures that you can then translate into even if you never want to look at a camera again, translate into really effective writing. But the other thing that we teach is producing, as not just an organizational thing, but as an actual creative function. And it's a way to organize yourself against time and resources to do large and complicated projects. And that applies to books, it applies to large feature projects, it applies to something that one of my first students in this program did, which is get right out of here, get hired by Tech Review, and then be asked to produce a graphic nonfiction novel about Mars exploration. And she used all the stuff that we taught her in this class. This was, now you're,
Before my time.
Erica None.
Right.
That's like, it's unfair to put me on the spot like that. And the other aspect of it is this is, of course, very much built around sort of a conventional, traditional idea of documentary, short form versions of the kinds of things you see on Nova or National Geographic and so forth. And people say, well, no one's actually going to hire us to do an 8-minute short. And that's not quite that's not as true a statement as some of the people who've said it think it is. But the point is, of course, once you know how to do that, you can do all the simpler things.
And you can see, if you go to our YouTube channel, we have our student documentaries on there, so you can see some of those, or most of those. Okay, a couple more things I want to run through, and then we should talk about whatever all of you want to talk about. The backbone of our program, and one of the things that makes our program unique, is the thesis, which is a 6,000-word year-long project. We ask you to come in the fall with ideas for that. We start working on that the first week that you're here. Right now, we're at the point where pretty much everyone's topic has been completely finalized, kind of serious reporting has started. Most of our students spend January, or at least a portion of January, traveling and reporting. One of our students this year is going to New Zealand. We've had students go to Hawaii, much to my chagrin, as I'm stuck here.
We've also had students go to Alaska and
yes.
Yellowstone, showing that not all of them are as smart as they think they are.
Right. We provide funding for that, so that's not something you need to cover on your own. That is also, the work for the thesis is done both in the Thesis Seminar and also in a one-on-one relationship with your Thesis Advisor. And those assignments are made in October based on what you're working on, what your career interests are, and what all of us have worked on and what we've done. Thesis advisors are from both within and out of the program. This year, we have Toby Lester, who's advising, might be advising 2 theses. He's former executive editor of The Atlantic, has done a lot of long-form narrative work. We have Russ Reimer, who's a former editor of Mother Jones, doing a thesis. And those, we let the students and the advisors sort of define that relationship and whether you're going to meet weekly or, but that, our goal is for that to be a very intensive experience. We have changed the thesis, I think now maybe 3 years ago, from 10,000 words to 6,000 words. The reason for that is because we're trying to make everything we do here be applicable to what you might do in the marketplace. And 10,000 words is a sort of neither fish nor fowl length. There are like 2 pieces in the New Yorker every year that run 10,000 words, and basically everything else in American journalism is long form is closer to 6,000. And so we just thought it made more sense to focus on a length that was you were much more likely to be asked to do.
If I can just, one of the things that we've, over the years, students asked for more and more training in features.
Yes, right.
And feature is a kind of elastic term, but in terms of length, roughly speaking, the shortest features are 12 to 1,500 words.
Which is the length of of a story that the longest news story you do.
And it's billed as a news feature. That tends to be. So in the course of this program, you'll do the sort of newspaper end of the feature world. You'll do short magazine features. You'll do that sort of mid-sized magazine feature of 3,000 words in the fall term, and then you'll do the classic sort of longer form, it's the largest project you do in magazine or
mostly,
in ordinary. It's of the scale that would be the major entry in magazines or web venues that behave like magazines before you start doing a book. So we try and make sure you have multiple experiences of writing in this somewhat more off the news kind of arena, and that you sort of work your way through the various subspecies or variants of the form.
Right. Yeah. Welcome. Help yourself to candy and cookies and. Okay, a couple of other things to mention. Something else that we've been doing, we've really actually added in large part to our program this year, is we've set up internships at different schools within MIT. So the School of Science, the School of Engineering, the School of, what is it, Urban Studies and Planning? Architecture and Planning?
Yeah.
Department of Urban Studies.
It's the Department of Urban Studies Planning, and it's the School of Architecture and
School of Architecture and Design.
Is it SAD or SAP? I can't remember.
Anyway, whatever. So,
SAP.
Architecture, okay. We've set up internships at those, at different schools. Those are all 10 hours a week.
They're paid?
Yes, the purpose of that is twofold. Without getting into the minutia of how we siphon money off from different places within MIT, having internships within these different schools means that we can convince the provost to give us more money for you. So that's one reason. But also because one of the things that we think is a huge benefit to being here is that you're here, that you're at MIT. And we want you not only to work with all of us, but to start to develop the sources that hopefully you'll be able to use throughout your career. And so all of these internships are in the news offices of these different schools. So you're interviewing scientists, writing pieces, working on things involving the research they're doing. So it's another way to connect you with the sort of larger community here. We also have internships at Undark, which is an online science publication that's run out of the Knight Science Journalism program. Do all of you know about the Night Science Journalism program? So, okay, I'll fill you in about that in a sec. But we have 2 internships a semester there as well. All of our students, this year, all of our students who did not get a full scholarship in one way or another have internships all year, which is helpful because it provides money, but also we think reinforces what you're doing here. So the Night Science Journalism program is a mid-career, year-long mid-career fellowship for science journalists that is also out of MIT, out of a building like 200 yards that way. There are 10 mid-career journalists who come here every year, and they can essentially do whatever they want for the year, take courses at Harvard or MIT. We have tried to connect our students with the Knight Fellows because we think it makes sense if there are people who have succeeded to the point that they're getting these year-long fellowships to connect people at the beginning of their careers with them. And we do that in a number of different ways. I think we have 6 of the 10 Knight Fellows this year teaching at least one class. But also the first assignment you have, literally even before the first day of classes, is writing a profile of one of the fellows. And so we assign everyone a fellow, also make those matches according to what you have said you're interested in, and which gives you an hour to sit down with that person and essentially just talk to them about their career. So that's what the Night Science Journalism Fellowship is. That bleeds into our other mentorship program, our alumni mentorship program. When you get here, you're assigned an alumni mentor. Again, according to what your interests are and career goals are. And that's another way that we hope to connect you with this larger science writing community. We are a program that takes community really seriously. We are constantly, we have an alumni listserv that we're not only constantly sending jobs out to and stuff like that, but are trying to keep them as involved with us as we can. So right now, earlier today, I was meeting with Christina Couch. Well, tell you about, and we were putting together different panels, alumni panels for the spring, where we'll have 4 alumni come back and do a panel on freelancing, 4 different alumni come back and do a panel on economic management of your career, stuff like that. So Christina Couch, I just mentioned, she is both an alum of our program, and there she is. That is, we did not plan that. Come on down, Chris. So Chris is a new addition to our program as of this year. She is, yes, she is pregnant. You don't need to be embarrassed about wondering, which I've made that mistake, or actually, I told you this story, right? About my dad in a grocery store when I was growing up. Yeah, someone when she was expecting.
Really glad that's the first thing you know.
Wasn't expecting. Chris is our first ever director of professional development. So what she does is works with students on their internships, and also on placing their article, on their sort of larger career goals, and also on placing the articles that they write for class, figuring out if there are ways that they can sell those articles while they're here. So you can talk a little bit about what you do. I
Sure.
need to talk for you.
Sure. So I work with students on getting together, figuring out where they want to go, what types of publications that they're interested in working for, what types of media they're interested in working in, and then really figuring out opportunities for how to get there. So We'll talk about internships, we'll talk about field reporting opportunities, things like that. My job is really just to sit down with students one-on-one, get to know exactly who they are, and then figure out what are things that MIT can do to really carve as close a path as possible to getting to where you want to be in the media world. So that might be searching out internships in newspapers or magazines. It might be finding public information officer opportunities or research assistant positions, that type of thing. But I work very closely to actually get to know each and every student and figure out what they want to do.
Chris also set the record for selling the most amount of stories while she was a student here. That's not why we hired her, but it didn't hurt.
Kind of is. Part of it.
Wrote, I think, my favorite feature that I've worked on since I've been here about.
I did. So there's two sort of.
We told them about the.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for the narrative nonfiction project, I did mine on. I met a plumber in Austin, Texas, who has multiple world records for the longest living cats. And I did,
as plumbers tend to have.
Sure, and he had a whole thing on like a specially made cat diet, and he had constructed like these tunnels in his house for the cats, and he had a movie theater for the cats, and the cats watched 3D films, and the cats he had 48 cats at once, so I learned a lot about cat science, which is not where I cover technology and psychology. I'm a working science journalist as well, so the places that you guys might be pitching your stories, I frequently will know those editors and have worked with them myself and can give you some inside tracks on this might be what they're looking for and how to direct pitches.
Right, great. One other thing I want to make sure I mention, one other part of our curriculum is the lab assignment, which also kind of stretches over both semesters. That's a requirement to spend a total of 15 hours inside observing 2 different labs. The reason for that is because we feel that if you're going to be writing about science, it's important for you to understand the culture of science and what that actually means. And also it's another way that hopefully we can help you develop sources within MIT. People who you can then come back to in your own careers.
Just to...
Yeah.
So there's this concept we have of the comfort zone. That is, if you come in with a background in one discipline or another, there are, your thesis can be right down the middle of your interests, all that kind of thing. But there's some things we ask you to take, take some effort outside stuff, and the lab experience is one of them because one of the things that not everybody really sort of knows in their bones is that different sciences, different disciplines work really differently. Yeah. Culturally, in terms of their intellectual process, the whole Megillah. And so this is one of the ways to, you're not supposed to be in your comfort zone in your lab assignment and in your lab visits, and you are supposed to get some sense of how other parts of the world behave.
We also, we ask that you can write your thesis if you have a comfort zone, in your comfort zone, or you're an NF, but we ask that you not do both right in whatever your lane is. So a couple of other quick points before I open it up. That might have you wondering, does that mean that everyone who comes in here has done bench science or has a background in science? The answer is no. Our students, both for whatever reason, both in terms of applicants and admitted students, break down almost 50-50 in terms of people who majored in humanities and people who majored in the sciences. And then within that breakdown, it's like English and biology are the 2 biggest, and then journalism and physics. But we have plenty of students who have no science background other than whatever requirements there were when they came in, whatever requirements they had in college. By the same token, you do not need to have a journalism background. We have plenty of students. We have students every year who have never written for a paper or their school paper. So this year we have 2 students who edited their school papers, one of whom oversaw a staff of 100, and 2 students who had absolutely no experience. One came from the NIH, and one was at Carnegie Mellon, and then after graduating worked in a lab. And we worked really hard to make sure that our curriculum is going to be appropriate for that entire range, meaning that no matter where you fall on that, you should not feel like you can't handle the work or that the work is too easy for you. There was one other thing I wanted to make sure. In terms of applications, if you do end up applying, the thing that we look for most on applications, like the top 10 things, are all your writing samples. We will look at your GRE scores and your scores. No one who is working for a newspaper or magazine or in any journalism job will ever be asked their GRE scores or their transcripts. Those are not what we pay the most attention to. We pay the most attention to your writing. There are a couple of main features of our application. One is a kind of personal essay that's part of all MIT applications. The other is examples of your science writing. We have plenty of applicants have written pieces just for the application for those samples. So those do not need to be things that you've already written. And in fact, if you don't have something that you think illustrates your proficiency in what you want to be doing, then it probably makes sense to write a piece. The other thing we ask for is that you've shown or can communicate that this is sort of more than a lark, that you have like a sustained interest in communicating science.
The second required essay basically asks you to show us why we should believe you can do this, and you may take as implied that why you would want to do this.
Right. One last thing about applications, because we are a small program, we can sort of go over in a lot of detail every single application. So if there's a part of your application that stands out in a way that you don't want it to, let us know, and let us know why that is. Like, there are people who have had horrible years and their grades reflect that, and they tell us that, and that's fine. One of my favorite students, who was a student the first year I was here, flunked out of college, and then ended up going back and explained why that was, and that was great. I mean, it might not have been great for him at the time, but it was fine for us. Same with GRE scores. Some people are better at taking those type of tests than others. If there's anything that you think we should be aware of, let us know. That is not something that will count against you.
I mean, bluntly, if you've got a great big gaping hole in your transcript, we're going to see it, and you might as well tell us why it's there.
Right, yes. By the same token, unless you're insanely wealthy and really need no money, ask for financial aid. That does not affect your chances to get in. We don't even look at that until we've made our decisions. Ask for financial aid pretty much no matter what.
And don't let the sticker price scare you off.
Yeah.
The sticker price for MIT is terrifying, and that we're well aware of that, and there's funding available for students.
Yeah. So unless either of you have,
Did you talk about the internship, the summer internship?
Oh yeah, the summer internship is our last requirement, and that is a summer internship. 6 weeks, is that right?
10 weeks.
10 weeks, 10 weeks, that's what I meant, 10 weeks. And those internships really run the gamut. You interned in France?
I interned in France. I worked on developing an engineering-themed card game because I wanted to do interactive development, and it was awesome. But we also have students who do more traditional publications. We have students all across the United States. We've also had students in India, Japan, Germany, I believe Italy as well.
Yeah.
So international internships are certainly possible. There's a possibility of doing, you can either do an elective or a spring semester internship, but everybody has to do a summer internship.
Right, the elective, actually I should also mention elective, but we've had people intern at everywhere from, the Boston Globe to Science to New Scientist to Popular Science to, pretty much any publication you can imagine. There have been times when students have been really interested in a publication that didn't have an internship, and we then went out and helped create an internship. Every year there's always anxiety. There are a couple of students who are always convinced they're never going to get an internship.
That has never happened.
You will get an internship. By the same token, we've never had a graduate, 100% of our graduates who want to be doing science writing are doing science writing.
We work with students, we meet with them in the first 2 weeks to talk about what do you know about your career? Where do you want to head? What are you interested in at this point? We check in with you periodically to make sure that the internship that you end up in is something that aligns with your career goals as well. So if you really want to do something in, say, investigative reporting, we will work with you throughout the year to make sure that you have clips and are well prepared to apply to those internships and that you wind up somewhere that you think will really benefit your career.
And I think, electives. So your fourth class, both semesters an elective. The only requirement there is that one of your 2 electives be for graduate credit. The other one can be undergraduate course. You can take any course at Harvard or MIT. We've had a lot of students have taken like science policy courses at Harvard's Kennedy School. So there are a lot of options for electives. You can also do an additional internship for credit for one of those semesters, if that's something that you're interested in. And I think that's all of what I wanted to make sure we covered.
You can also do listener status. So if you see a really great elective that you want to do, but you don't necessarily have the bandwidth to take out another class, then you can just go and sit in on the lectures, and that's actually a really lovely way to sort of get up to speed in a field that you might not be up to speed in.
Right. So why don't we open it up to you guys? What questions do you all have? Yeah.
Yeah.
Either one. Yeah.
You mentioned about the writing samples. If you have samples that are like podcast.
You can definitely submit those. They would be in addition to the writing sample. But yeah, we've had a lot of, over the years, we had someone submit a song. Am I remembering that right, Shannon? That they performed.
Don't think that worked out terribly well.
That did not work out terribly well, but...
But don't let that?
Yes, right. No, but yeah, you should...
We have had podcasts in the past, and I think from students we've admitted as well, so.
Yeah, you should submit whatever you feel like puts you in the best light. And actually by that same token, the sort of answer that yes, and you can submit that as long as you also submit the writing samples. That's true also, especially for our thesis. Last year we had someone who wanted to do an audio component of her thesis, which we then were able to hire someone to work with her, and did, as long as she also did the 6,000 words. We've had students, my first thesis student is an incredible illustrator who is on a National Geographic Fellowship at the moment, or finished a National Geographic Fellowship recently. At her thesis, she wrote about gull taxonomy, and her thesis included just absolutely incredible illustrations that she had done. And
I'm still waiting for the first person to say I want to do a documentary film as my thesis.
Yes.
And but that is open to that is open to somebody. But the one thing also about your writing samples, a lot of the application is both showing us your skills and your prowess, but also show us, to the extent that you can, that you're serious about this particular craft and area. So one of the things that I, just sort of the secret tricks I tell people to do is tell us what makes you, tell us what you read or listen to or have watched that says this is, I read these kinds of things and this is what makes me want to do this. Because that way we know that you actually are paying attention to the field.
Yeah.
Also, if you are a member of any professional organizations, if you go to science writer meetups, if you have done any sort of informal projects on science communication related things, please mention those.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned science policy a few times. Have you had any alumni students go into science policy?
I feel like we have, but I'm blanking now. Well, yeah, we have one student who actually is working at the Broad Institute in their policy/communications office. This is the first year we had the policy component. And again, that was somewhat a response to some student questions, but even more than that, just a sense that this was another potential professional avenue for people interested in this field and wanted to add that in. And Bina is brilliant, and I was able to convince her to do this. So we've had a number of students who have gone on to work in labs or research institutes. I can't think of anyone who's gone on to work in policy on a governmental level.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you think that potential employers view having done this program plus a lot of science experience in contrast to, say, a bachelor's degree in journalism?
So I think in journalism generally, how do potential employers view a master's degree in this program versus a bachelor's degree in journalism? In journalism generally, it's kind of the proof is in the pudding. This might be a sort of tipping point thing, but what employers are going to look at are your clips. And then they might feel like, well, we have, we can look at the track record of MIT's program and know that the students that come out of there are responsible and talented and all of that. And that could certainly be a factor, but it doesn't matter. In my experience, and I've been on both, I've had almost every job. I've been an editor, I've been a reporter for everything from a website where I was filing 3 or 4 times a day to a quarterly publication. I've sort of worked the gamut from news weeklies to monthlies to, it doesn't matter what your bona fides are if you don't have clips that show that you can do the work that they want.
The one way, and there are 2 ways in which this helps you though. One is it gets you in the door.
Yes.
Certainly for your first internships. I mean, the fact that you are an MIT student trying to get a science writing internship is actually genuinely helpful. But the other thing is there are an increasing number of ways to do science writing and science communication that are not journalism. There's public information, there is the policy stuff. And these are jobs where more traditional academic sort of seals of approval sometimes have more weight than they would in a newsroom. I should say, I think our students have found, and I have found, that a degree from MIT probably carries more weight than it should. Not that it's not great, but just that I don't think that anyone should be able to say, here's a piece of paper from this institution, therefore I'm worthy. But we have found that employers certainly look at this as they appreciate that. So
I would add that the networking is also a significant boost for our program. We have a phenomenal alumni network as well as a partnership with the Knight Science Journalism Fellowship, and so those are resources because there's an agreement between MIT and Harvard. Whatever journalism resources at Harvard is also available to MIT, so when you go out into the working world, there is an established network there for you. I think that in undergraduate journalism programs that can significantly vary from school to school. Here it is particularly strong.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So you mentioned something about an internship counting for credit as an elective. Does that mean, so like I couldn't take another elective if I did the internship instead?
So, the internships that I talked about earlier with like in different schools or at Undark, those are 10-hour-a-week positions in addition to your coursework. Oh, the question, repeat the question.
Well, that, plus those are more correctly referred to as research assistants.
Right, yes, right.
Internship is
we refer to them as internship, but those are really RA. But the reason why they're RA positions is for that funding issue internally, so we can get more money. Nothing that you need to worry about. We would not recommend you're doing a full course load, a research assistant position, and an internship. We essentially feel like in addition to your course load, you can handle 10 hours a week of something. Outside of that, we have found that it gets really tricky. So if you want to take 4 courses and weren't doing an RA-ship and wanted to do an internship, great. But yeah, we would not recommend doing what amounted to 20 hours of extra stuff in addition to your coursework.
Right, but the research assistant thing is a must? Like you can't? Nope,
the research assistant thing is that it's not required by any means. It's something that bluntly, the research assistantships bring roughly, they can increase your aid package by $7,000 in addition to the $6,000-ish that you would get for working there. Okay. So that's why they're appealing, and they're also appealing for the reasons I talked about earlier, just because of the connections you can form. But no, those are not requirements.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you find when students want to, well, like you said, they have to rotate in the lab for a little bit, do you find they usually get their first choice lab, or is it a struggle?
So the question was, when students need to find their labs, do they usually get their first choice lab, or is it a struggle? We've been doing this for 15 years, so we have a pretty good connection with labs. People don't always get their first choice. That we've never had a situation where finding a lab has been a significant tax on someone's time. If someone asks a lab or two and don't find anything, we can always say, okay, here are these 10 labs that we know that you're welcome at if you want to reach out to one of those. And when, in general, we have found within MIT writ large, a really enormous openness to having our students, interact in labs, write about people, do documentaries on people. One of the documentaries you can check out online is with Wolfgang Ketterle, Nobel Prize winner, who The Coldest Place in the Universe is actually at MIT. And the documentary was about that. That's someone who is like, scheduling meetings in between trips to the bathroom. And sitting down for a documentary is not a small time commitment. And he not only did that very willingly, but then came to our thesis day and watched the documentary and said that it was the best distillation of his work for the public that he had ever seen. Right? Am I getting that right?
He did.
Yeah.
He did. And, Bob Hurwitz, the worm Nobel.
Right.
You know about the worm? C. elegans. Okay, it's...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he's one of the C. elegans crew, and,
right.
And we filmed in his lab, and he sat down with us, and every MIT professor is very busy, yet they seem every year to be happy to make time for us.
Great. I have a follow-up.
Yeah, sure.
You said previously, as far as electives, you could take classes from Harvard or MIT. Does the same apply for labs rotations?
Sure, yeah. In fact, you could do, I think last year we had a student who did a lab at Tufts.
Yeah?
The question was, sorry, for labs, can you also do labs at Harvard and MIT? We might not have all of the same connections, obviously, but it doesn't need to be an MIT lab, it just needs to be a lab.
Okay.
Someone my year did their lab rotation in an art conservation lab within the Boston Museum of Fine Arts.
The Museum of Fine Arts, yeah. That was a great,
yeah.
That was,
The Raygon Institute,
Yeah.
college is there.
Yeah, right. So it can, anywhere that counts as a lab.
That's a real lab doing
Right.
real work.
Right.
Including nuclear?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. You know we have a nuke here, right?
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Question from the interwebs. I wonder if the program deals much with the business side of freelancing, for instance, dealing with taxes and that sort of
Yes, great question. So the question is if we deal with the business side of freelancing, especially taxing and stuff like that. I actually just had a class last week about that exact topic. And Chris and I this morning were talking about the session that we're going to put together for this spring, a sort of hands-on panel with alums dealing with those issues. So yes, definitely. And something else I should actually mention about the program, last week, and this is something we do every fall, actually over the last 2 weeks, when I've been meeting with the students, I've asked them, what are the things that you want to cover that you either feel like we haven't dealt with or we haven't dealt with enough? And so they gave me a list, and then I went and figured out how we can include all that stuff in the spring. So an advantage of having a program that's this size is that we can respond pretty quickly to what people are interested in. We have things that we want to make sure we cover, and outside of that, we want to cover what you all are most interested in. And that's also, as we've added all of these different modules over the past 5 or so years, those have been largely in response to student requests, and then we've pared them back or increased them also according to feedback we get. So yeah.
There's also a lot of guest speakers that come in that talk about the nuts and bolts of what it is to be a journalist. I was a freelancer for 10 years before coming here. Seth is freelanced as well, so we know what the financial mechanics of those are.
And I'm freelancing now.
Yeah, we're both freelancing now. But we also...
As am I.
It's okay, Tom.
We also
They think because I have this
students,
camera thing with
alumni mentors who can
I told them
help guide
that,
them through sort of the nuts and bolts of being within a journalism profession.
Yeah.
You said ask for financial aid. Were you talking in the essay or in
No. So there's actually a form. There's a box essentially on the application that says, "Do you want financial aid?"
Say yes.
Say yes.
Just don't even think about it. Say
No,
yes.
you don't need to put that in your essay. Yeah. No. There literally is a form, a section of the application that asks.
Unless you are interested in endowing the program, in which case.
Yes. Right.
In which case also say yes.
Yeah. Right.
Do you find when your students do their summer internships, do they usually get like a job offer out of it?
Yeah, so the question was, do students usually get a job offer out of their summer internships? Usually, I would not say usually they do. It's not uncommon.
Okay.
And even more common is that that's the start of a working relationship that might lead to a job down the line, or might just lead to a sort of long-term freelancing situation. Not all of the places where our students intern then have positions that are open at the end of those. That's not a rarity, but it's not. We certainly don't want our students to sort of bank on that. It just depends on the outlet and the situation.
One quirk of our schedule, because we're a 12-month program, you don't actually graduate in June. You graduate in October, and that has an odd consequence for internships. Many of our students do second, often paid, I think virtually always paid, and sometimes well-paid internships that will go for 6 months, places like, I think Grist has one that,
Yeah.
and there are several
A couple of
others.
students do that. Yeah.
And that both extends the period in which you're doing, you're eligible to those because you're either still a student officially until October, or because
You're
it's
just graduating.
within 1 year of graduating, the various restrictions people put on internships. But that means, first of all, you get a second run of, real employment in a sort of protected way, and it's also a way to develop more employment life and another connection for a possible job, or more freelance connections.
Right.
And, I don't think, it's not a huge number of people who do it, but between...
But again, it's not nothing.
Yeah, it's 1 or 2 a year, I think we'll probably end up doing something like that. Does that seem
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And it's also worth mentioning that if you haven't, and I don't know, if you find an internship that's available through a nonprofit organization,
Oh, yeah.
MIT also has funding to help support that if it's an unpaid internship. So
Yeah, we will not let you go unpaid in the summer.
Or low paid.
Or low
low
paid,
paid.
yes. So, we'll make sure that whether or not your summer internship is a real paying job, that it will feel like a real paying job in your bank account.
Right.
Right, so that's been really useful for getting students in with
Nonprofits or...
phenomenal nonprofits, whether that's environmental organizations or investigative journalism networks,
Right,
things
yeah.
like that.
Yep.
NASA was listed as one of the internships.
Yep.
Is that a specific location or?
No, we've had students, the question was NASA was, and NASA's listed as one of our places our students have interned. We've had students in Houston and in Washington, or
Washington-ish.
Washington-ish, yeah.
Washington, the student in Houston came from NASA.
Okay.
As opposed to.
Oh, right, yes, right, yeah.
So I think we've had have we ever had a space telescope intern?
Yes,
And
yeah.
I think we've had a Goddard Institute for Space Science intern at one point. I don't remember. I mean, I've been here long enough that a lot of those earlier ones have disappeared in the mists of time. But it is more than one center. And we've had people at NIH. I mean, sort of all the major government science agencies have internships. I don't think we've ever placed anyone at NSF, which isn't surprising because that's primarily a funding organization rather than, as the NIH, an actual research center. Not sure we've ever had anyone at CDC, but that doesn't mean somebody couldn't go there. It's a place. It's a working place.
We don't know if the EPA will still be functioning in a year, but if it is, yes.
Just as a supplement to that comment, the reason I talked about the doing an internship while doing this is because NASA has multiple avenues that will pay for your master's or partially pay for your master's. So if you get in with them and do like a continuous internship with like the Pathways program,
Right.
then they'll supplement or pay for it, which is...
Shannon, you were looking,
The timing on the Pathways program is problematical, but if that's something you're really interested, come talk to me. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you publish your applicant to acceptance rate for this program?
I don't think we publish it, but last year we had 60-something applications, and we let in 10 students. That's pretty average. Yeah.
Okay.
We usually, I think we've gone from, since I've been here, anywhere from like 48 to almost 70.
More than 70 a couple times.
And we always let in 10 students, assuming 8 will be here. We typically let in 10 students and 2 students on a wait list. Some years, this year, we have 1 student on the who came from the wait list. Some years we have 2.
Last year we had none. The year before we had a couple.
It just depends. Yeah, but that's roughly the range.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there an interview process? Or?
No, there's no. So you're certainly not required to have an interview. We have prospective students who come in sometimes to talk to us. We always try to figure out a way to accommodate people. When students are accepted, I would say probably
between 50 and 60% of those students come and visit before they have to make their final decision. Yeah, but there's no, we certainly don't require an interview. And that would be something that, you know, I mean, unless like you showed us in some very obvious way that you were not fit to work in a program with other people, it certainly wouldn't hurt you. But because we can't interview everyone, we also would not make that a determining factor, just to be fair to all the other applicants. By the same token, I've had this question a couple times. We don't look at your social media unless you include it on your application, which you should feel happy to do that. And again, that's just because of an issue of fairness. Right. You know, if we're not going to go through everyone's social media, then we're not going to go through anyone's. So,
though it still makes sense not to do
yes.
stuff that would make employers go,
right.
This person will never darken these doors.
Yes.
I did have.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
So you talked about social media. That's something that's increasingly important.
Yep.
I think, is that something that we get training in?
So the question was, do we get training in social media? We usually do at least a session on a dedicated session on social media, but it is both implicitly and explicitly something that's built into the curriculum. So like there's a whole, one of the news classes is on post-publication promotion. It's something that we will talk about for at least one class sort of pretty extensively, but then that's a thread throughout the year, the same way that every aspect of kind of professional development is something that we want to keep coming back to. So for instance, by the same token, we don't have a pitching section of the course, but that is built into every assignment you have. So for your thesis, one of the things you need to do is pitch it 4 different ways for 4 different types of publications, and usually 4 different lengths. And the reason for that is because we want to help you develop the skills that you can monetize one big assignment in multiple ways. You know, there is in the news section, there's something on interviewing, but then there are also, we talk about interviewing and you know, throughout the feature section, so there are a lot of things that are sort of threaded throughout the entire program. That's also the type of thing that we've, in years past, responded, like if there's more or less interest in that, we can do more or less on that. Yeah. So
we actually, I mean, we explicitly learn from our students in that area because, of course, social media is not you know, it's not a body of material like calculus you can look
right.
at and study. It's this protean thing.
And it's something we've sort of gone back and forth on. I think one year it was even more of a part of the curriculum, and we felt like in terms of what it could do for you professionally, we were overemphasizing it. And we've also found that it's the type of thing that some people are interested in and good at, and some people aren't. And I know that there's a feeling that you need to brand yourself and have a social media identity. And that is 100% true if you're only looking at people who have branded themselves and have a social media identity. There are plenty of writers who haven't and
are doing just fine.
Are doing well. You just aren't seeing them on Twitter because they're not on Twitter. So,
Twitter is the mind killer, in my personal view, but that's just me.
Yeah. Other questions? Yep.
What's the proportion of people, I guess on average, that come in years after undergrad versus the ones that come straight from undergrad?
That's a great question. So the question is, what is the proportion of people who come in immediately following undergrad versus years after? I guess the easiest way to answer is that I think our average age is usually like late 20s, mid to late 20s. And that is figuring in that probably 2 or 3 people are right out of school. So we usually have at least a couple of students who are in their early 30s, late, 29, 30, 31. We've had students who are significantly older. So yeah, it's a pretty good range. This year, I think we have 3 students who are either just out of school or within a year of school. 3 students who are like in between 29 and 32. And I guess that leaves 2 other students who are in their mid-20s. So it's a range.
Mm-hmm. And I have to say, sort of 2-3 months into the semester and that far removed from reading their applications and knowing how old they are.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, it's impossible.
It's never something that
stands out.
I think any of us have noticed as an issue. I mean, you were.
I was the oldest, so I know.
No, but was that something that, like, did you feel like when you were there that you were?
No,
Yeah.
it wasn't.
I mean, it's because you were so immature otherwise. But
Yeah. It was because of my staunch immaturity. No, I mean, within my cohort, I was 33 when I attended. We had students who were just fresh out of undergrad. There's a pretty broad range in there. It was great.
You got married the week after you got here?
I got married the second day of class.
Second day of class.
Yeah.
This year we had
Don't do
Planning
that.
is her strong suit.
This year we had a student who got married the week before class. Brittany.
Shocking how many people do that.
Yeah, well.
Within a month of starting the program.
I filed my first assignment from my reception, from my rehearsal dinner. So don't do that. Be smarter than I was.
Bonkers.
Yep.
Follow-up question to that question. How much are you just looking at the writing samples alone, or does that extra experience from waiting a few years after you're out of school do anything to your...
So the question was, do we just look at writing samples, or does time out of school help or hurt your chances? Mm-hmm. It does not help or hurt your chances. We don't look at people who are right out of school and think they could use some more seasoning. We don't look at people who are not right out of school and think, why weren't they applying here when they were right out of school? If you can handle the work, we feel like you can handle the work. There have been some times when there have been applicants who, one or the other of us have felt needed, kind of hadn't fully figured out what they wanted to do. And so there have certainly been times when I've recommended, like, why don't you spend a year, and if you want to reapply, I'd love to see it, but it seems like you're not entirely sure if this is the path you want to go down. But there's no benefit or demerit for applying at any point in your life.
I mean, one thing we've seen, and it comes actually at a wide range of ages, where this is kind of the lost soul program. You've finished college, you've finished a PhD, you've done some work and you're not really interested in your job, whatever it may be, and you like science and you really enjoyed reading novels, and how hard can science writing be? This is what I'm going to apply to. And they don't usually say it that way, but you can often read that between the lines. And that's the kind of thing where we would look at that and say, maybe you want to really, figure out what this work.
So what is the best way to figure out if this is really what you want to do?
The question is, what is the best way to figure out if this is what you want to do? I mean, now we're getting into like meta life questions, but my approach generally to decisions is, if I'm faced with a decision and I'm having a hard time with it, I'll arbitrarily decide on one or the other. And if I feel like phew, then that was the right decision. And if I feel like fuck, then that was the wrong decision. If this is not an easy career. Journalism is a tough field right now. Writing about science is challenging. If it's something that you feel like you are passionate about and can't imagine not doing in some form, then that's a good sign. I think, you know, what I think what Tom was trying to say, and what I would also say, is that it's not, this is an intense program. It's not a good program to come to figure out if this is what you want to do. There are other cheaper, better ways to do that. You know, we throw a lot at you. We ask a lot of you. And so if you don't know that, you know, it's not like a 1L experience. We're not trying to weed people out. But if you don't know that this is what you want to do, I think that's going to be tough. Just, you know, sort of maintaining that level of involvement and intensity over a year.
And I guess
if you're here, though, I mean, you know,
you showed up in this room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But the other thing is, you know, I maybe put too high an emphasis on this, but seriously, if you read stuff and you sort of put the book or the magazine down and say, you know, reading this makes me happy, or I want to write, you know, this is the kind of thing that moves me, that's an indication that you really might want to do this. But if, you know, if this just looks like interesting work, well, it is. It's great work.
Right.
But it may not be greater than some other kind of work, and you kind of should, you know, there's no real magic formula, but you want to have a sense that some combination of being really interested in some aspect of science, or all of science, or the whole exploring thing, or any of that sort of stuff, is something that, you know, gives you pleasure, that you like finding new stuff out.
And also, yeah,
and at the same time, you know, writing is one of those things that's really wonderful to have done. And there are
sucks doing it.
There are some people. There are, in fact, some people who enjoy putting one word after another.
I hate it.
But as you see, so you got to have some sense that there is, however perverse it may be, pleasure in some aspect of doing the writing.
But I'd also say there's no.
Let's not try and drive them all out.
There's no. I mean, there's no danger in applying. Applying, and then if you get in, you know, it's obviously something you should think about seriously and talk to us and other people about. And you know, we don't want to make it sound like if you didn't feel like you were struck by lightning at some point and told you will be a science writer, that you shouldn't.
The voice of John McPhee coming
out
of
right. You know, apply. Just even the process of putting together the application will probably help to clarify that somewhat. And there have been students who have applied and gotten in and then have talked to me, and I've said, like, you know, obviously we love to have you, but it doesn't sound like this is the right move for you at this point. We're not going to try and convince you to come here if we don't think it's right for you. So, you know, apply and see what happens.
I'd recommend testing something out on a small scale. Write a blog post about some form of science that you know about, make a 2-minute YouTube video, something to really, you know, interview a scientist, even just informally, something that will give you a little bit of hands-on with the skills that would go into science writing, and that might give you an indication of, hey, I'm really into this, or this is absolutely not for me.
Yeah, and I will also say, you know, it was in my life, it was much easier for me to identify what I wanted to do. You know, like, what I love about this job is connecting with people and interviewing and getting to feel like I'm kind of, I can choose whatever I find to be most fascinating, call up the smartest people about it, and force them to spend time with me. Mm-hmm. And that, if I hadn't had the opportunity to do that, anxiety and self-doubt and self-loathing and whatever else.
You were in the right profession.
Exactly. Yeah, so I certainly don't want to give anyone the impression that, like, unless you know, feel like you're marching down the chosen path, you shouldn't think about doing this.
Absolutely. And one of the nice things about this job is it's the way I put it is you get to go into the basements of museums.
Yeah.
You know,
which are
really
awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Other questions? Yep.
Is there an option to take a sample class?
A sample test?
A sample class.
Oh, a sample class. No. The question was, is there an option to take a sample class? I mean, we're particularly poorly suited for that because it's all an there aren't really lectures. They're all workshops and seminars, and yeah. So one thing, not only at MIT but at a lot of universities, for certainly bigger classes, if you find out where they are, you can just come and show up and sit in. But yeah, in a class of 8, it would be hard to do that and not, yeah.
That said, once you're admitted,
yeah, definitely,
you can come and sit in on a class.
Yeah.
But we found it's basically impossible to sort of do the classes and have a parade through the fall of people just kind of sitting on the side. I'm kind of curious. I mean, this is a small enough group. And we've got a little bit of time. If there aren't more questions right now, not to preclude them coming down the road, who are you guys and what brought you to this point? Okay.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
If you need to take it off.
No. I was saying the gentleman, you raised your hand. Go for it.
Sure. My name's Evan. Okay. I am a research scientist right now, and I've been a scientist for many years, I guess you could say, like 5 to 7 years. And I was a graduate student, and I love science, and particularly like virology and genetics, but I wasn't really feeling research bench science as much anymore, so I'm here because I love science and I would like to continue working in the field. So
we've had a couple of more than just a handful of students come here after PhDs. Yeah,
with basically that profile.
Yeah, people who realized they love science but didn't love drilling down deeper and deeper into one very specific area of science.
I've seen a lot of people in the science writing field like that, just based on their own like biography. So
yeah.
It was refreshing to see.
Yeah, definitely.
I have to get out of here.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thanks for stopping by, Chris.
Nice for meeting you.
Tell your husband I said hi.
So I'm actually not even here for the program. I'm his best friend.
Okay.
I'm a physician in Rhode Island, but
I love support. Great. All right.
I wanted to come drive him up and support him.
That's
so
awesome. What kind of medicine do you practice?
Internal medicine.
Great. Awesome. I wish I had a best friend like that.
Yeah.
Nice going, man.
Out on the way here.
Right.
Okay.
I'm Colby, and I've wanted to do educational media ever since high school. I went to undergrad for communications and had a focus on filmmaking, and I wanted to do documentary at the time. And I've since spent my time since then like researching all these areas of science and where there are gaps between public knowledge and critical understandings of science that actually have major consequences for society as a whole. So.
Great. Yeah.
I'm Fernanda.
Wait, I'm sorry, what's your name?
Fernanda.
Fernanda?
Yeah, it's like Fernando, but with an A.
Okay, got it. So Fernanda.
Fernanda.
That's all. What kind of name is that?
It's Portuguese.
Awesome. All right.
And
You're in.
oh, I do speak Portuguese.
There you go.
Brazil, I'm your person. But I'm a graduate student at Harvard. I do HIV research, and I think what you described about I didn't like that I was funneling myself into just this one thing. I mean, it's an area I love, but I love so much other stuff, and I think with writing, you get to become sort of a mini expert in these little
Yes,
things.
yeah.
And I love the feeling of when you write a profile of another scientist, and they send it to their parents, and their parents are like, oh, I finally understand what you do.
Right,
That's probably the best feeling in the world.
Yeah. I mean, it is both about science writing and journalism in a larger sense. It's why I think it's, as I said, it's a very difficult profession for a lot of reasons. It's hands down the coolest profession. I mean, I've like been to Iraq. I've interviewed presidents in the Oval Office. I've been on campaign planes. I've been backstage at concerts. Just like things that you would never get to do unless you spent your entire life in one of those fields. I can just do again and again and again. It's crazy. It's for someone who's curious about the world, it's incredible. Yeah.
I'm Simon.
SIMA?
SIMA.
Okay.
I work at the Whitehead Institute.
Uh-huh.
I study parasites. And I've just always liked writing, and I've always really liked science.
We get a few of those.
Yeah.
So
And what do you do at the Whitehead?
I'm a research associate in a lab that studies a parasite called toxoplasma.
Got it.
Yeah, I don't know what you said about how writing sucks in the moment, but I actually don't agree.
That's great. I'm thrilled for you. That's, yeah.
Yeah, and I've kind of been ignoring that part of my life for the last 10 years for some reason. Like, I specifically went to undergrad at McGill because Canadians are very serious about their education, and you just take science. And so I thought that was what I wanted. And I thought I should just like really focus and really be a scientist. But I feel like maybe I should admit that I like the other side.
Yeah. Great.
Indeed.
More power to you if you love the act of writing. It's one of the first things I always tell my students, because inevitably someone comes and says to me and that they feel like they're in the wrong profession because the act of writing is so painful. And I always have felt like writing is like putting a nail gun to my head. I love it. I love doing the research and reporting. I love it when it's done. And there are times when I get a lot of pleasure out of doing it, but for the most part, it's just excruciating for me.
I would, to those of you in the room and any of you out there in TV land, that's perhaps on one end of the spectrum of the way writers, it's, sometimes writing can be an unbelievable agony, but sometimes it's, when you enter the space of whatever it is you're working on, it can be just the most wonderful thing. I had one of my now 6 books was like that for the entire book writing process. I got up every morning and I said, what do you want to be today? And it would tell me. The other 5 books, not so much, but that one. So it can happen.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I am a current undergraduate student at the University of Texas in Austin.
Go Longhorns.
I'm pretty young, I guess, youngest one here. But my parents my mom was a chemist, my dad's an engineer. So I grew up on science experiments, but I had an artistic talent, and I decided I wanted to pursue communications first. I'm a PR major, added studio art as a second major, so I'm a traditional painter. And then I had a life-threatening accident a couple of years ago, and after that got way more interested in health writing, and so I wrote for the Texas Health Journal a little bit, and then applied for a NASA internship, did that, and over the summer I'm currently working at NASA in Greenbelt, writing for Hubble, and I love it. It's just the greatest thing ever. I love it so much, and I want to pursue it more in depth, and actually get some real training in doing this specific thing. So that's
great.
Yeah. Excellent. That's lovely to know you all. And now back over to you. We
can certainly. We don't need to. I'm sure everyone has plenty to do, but if there are any other questions, yeah.
I noticed on the website you provided some sample writing. A lot of the style, or there's past publications by students, and a lot of the styles open up each story as if they're like writing a biography of the person they're interviewing. And I understand that's like a very common format in science writing. Are you going to specifically be looking for that in the portfolio? Because my style is much different.
So the question was, we have some examples of science writing on our website that our students have done. Is that what we're looking for? No, certainly not. In fact, we're not. We're in the process, literally within the next couple of weeks, of relaunching our website. I can give you guys a sneak preview of what it will look like. So we're not spending a huge amount of time updating it. But we feel like our current website does not kind of paint us in the light that we feel like we should be painted. So, and actually, this is when you load this page. Here, if you guys can see. Let's see if it will. Yeah, so everything like slides into place. And this will have all, essentially everything will be new on here. So, but no, we're looking for your writing, not for you to do what it looks like our students have done. And our students also, that is an accident of chance that it seems like that. That's not because we
when we were
teach it that
updating
way, or
And when we were updating, we'd put, whatever. If there was a clump of recent stories that did that, then that's what you would see. And if there was, if it had been something else, you would have seen something else. One thing I'd recommend as you're, just as a resource in general, but also as you're sort of looking towards applying here or anywhere else, is check out, if you don't already know the site, the Open Notebook.
Oh yeah.
Do you guys know about this? All right.
It's an incredible resource for science writers. And they have recently launched, within the last couple of weeks, a portal there specifically for getting started in the industry. But they have everything from, they have a pitch database, they have, they sort of analyze stories that have already been written. It's really phenomenal.
And that section where they're analyzing stories that have already been written, those are stories that some, a couple of very, very clever, thoughtful people have sort of seen as exemplary pieces.
Yeah.
So it's and they have a variety of styles and presences and voices and so on. So not a bad place to be. I think they even have some interviews with.
Yeah, they interviewed me.
Well, that's, and they improved on that era.
Yeah. Yep.
The writing can also cover stuff like economics and society or ethics or other things that might not.
You mean in the writing sample or in
the portfolio?
In the sure, you can, if there are pieces that you feel like really illustrate who you are best, but sort of similar to including a podcast or a video, you shouldn't do that instead of including pieces that cover more traditional science.
Okay.
But feel free to also include it, if that makes sense.
The usual portfolio is 3 or 4 pieces, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes people throw in a little bit more. Sometimes, they'll just submit 2. But basically so out of that, you want us to be able to, you put together the portfolio that you think best represents who you are and your capacities and so on. But make sure that we'll come away from that and your 2 sort of essays, knowing that you actually really do care about science and can write about it in ways that the public will understand.
Debbie. So, please, and Candy, take it. One of our current students.
We do our best to keep them fed.
Yes. There was something else that I just thought of. In your portfolio, in your application, probably every year we have someone who submits like a 60-page portfolio.
That doesn't help.
Yeah. So, advice that we give to our students, just in dealing with editors and dealing with anyone, is think about how you would, what you would like to receive from someone. And 60 pages would probably feel like a lot if you were also reading 60 other applications.
3 really good pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Should we try to go for like varieties of length? So we have like a 5,000 piece, a 1,000 piece, a
It's not.
100-word piece.
It's not necessary. Really what you should do is include what you feel like is your best writing. And not worry about, covering different genres or different lengths or...
3 haiku would probably not be sufficient.
Yes, right,
but
yeah. But, there are plenty of students whose 3 or 4 samples have all been kind of the same flavor and have gotten in. That's not an issue.
So would like a top 10 list of scientific misconceptions be like suitable for this, or is that too?
I think it would be suitable as kind of an addition.
Okay.
Yeah. The writing samples should be kind of more traditionally writing sample-y.
Okay.
Yeah. The question was, I'm sorry, the question was, would like a top 10 list of common science misconceptions. Certainly and I'm not saying include that as an extra, just just throw that in. If you feel like that illustrates your perspective or your sense of humor, or, it's not that we won't look at that, but since that's not the type of writing that we're mostly requiring, what we want to know, we feel like in a year, we can teach you a lot. We can teach you a lot about journalism. We can teach you a lot about science journalism. We can't teach you all of that and how to write. So we want to know that you can write. Yeah.
And say if I authored a much longer white paper or study or model, would a summary of that, two-page summary of that?
Sure, yeah. So the question was, if there's a much longer piece, a white paper, or any kind of much longer piece, would a sort of condensed version of that be appropriate? Absolutely.
Okay. And you can say, this is what I'm studying, but here is the white paper, or here's the link to the white paper.
Yeah, right.
I mean, don't hide it from us.
That was my next question. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
About the editing process, once we're here, is it more inter-peer focused, or is there a lot of one-on-one stuff with professors?
So the question was, the editing process, is that more inter-peer focused or more one-on-one with the editor? The answer is yes. A huge part of the, yes to both. A huge part of the GPSW is workshopping. And in workshopping, we feel that oftentimes it is easier to identify in someone else's writing mistakes that you might be making and not be able to see it in your own writing because it's your own writing and so you're so deep in it. So we feel that the peer-to-peer process is incredibly important, but that does not replace the faculty or instructor to student process. All of your assignments will get edited and commented on by the instructor. Different instructors have different approaches to that. Some are kind of real nitty-gritty line editors. Some are more big picture editors, but you'll get that for every assignment in addition to the peer-to-peer stuff. And one thing that we really encourage actually is that students do that type of peer-to-peer workshopping even out of class. And oftentimes they do.
So I guess going on with this peer editing, would it be a good idea to include, say, a rebuttal article to something that was published in the MIT Tech Review?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, the question was, would it be a good idea to include a rebuttal article to something that was published in Tech Review or any place else? Sure, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, assuming that that's like that sounds like it's a piece of writing responding to another piece of writing, that's totally fine. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I spent a while as a media critic, so I ate that stuff up. Yeah.
Great.
All right. Well, if there aren't more questions, we'll let you guys go. You're driving back to Rhode Island. Is that right? Hopefully you can.
There was some snow coming down.
Beat the rush hour.
Yeah. It'll be a long one, I'm sure.
And feel free to follow up.
Who's the best person to contact?
You can contact Shannon, either Shannon or me, S. Larkin, SLARKIN at MIT.edu. She's probably the best first person to follow up on, just because
she knows everything.
I'll get you to the right person if you don't know exactly what you're
Yeah, and oftentimes I'm trying to become more efficient at email by answering it less, so you're more likely to get a quicker response from her. And Shannon also just, in general,
you should know knows everything about everything, having to do with MIT and lots of other things also. So she's a good person for question. Almost any question that you have, she will either be able to answer or direct you to the person who can answer it.
And if you ask nicely, I'll send you pictures of the puppy.
Yes. And in fact, sometimes her puppy is here. Not today, I assume.
Alas.
I was worried that she would jump up and try to eat all of them.
Yes. I also bring my dog sometimes, so. Dog therapy.
Yes.
All right.
I do not bring my cat because he's nasty.
Yeah, that's, having taken care of Tom's cat, I can confirm that. Okay, thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate it. Yeah, let us know whatever you end up doing, if we interact with you or not. Good luck on everything. Please keep communicating about science. It's something that we feel like is very important in the world, very important today.
And getting more so.
Yeah, so keep at it. And thanks.